sleeper must awake.
Oh, well, apparently I lied to you. So for the first 2 episodes of this podcast, I made a point of letting you know that I was not your host because I planned on only recording essays that I wrote on this show. But also, recently I've been interviewed for my own book, and all those great conversations, deep conversations that I had with people, with very cool people who were like-minded. Well, it was too much fun. I just had to continue the discussions, and I was not gonna wait for people to invite me on their shows, so I just thought, I'm gonna invite them. So here we are today. Welcome to this 3rd episode of Hopscotch Chronicles podcast. I am your host, Dominique Vallée, and today I am interviewing the great, I think that word applies, the great Miguel Conner from the Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio podcast. Some comments about the episode. I was extremely nervous. I kind of am right now. Apparently, I'm not getting used to the camera very quickly. I guess one day I will. And especially interviewing someone for the first time like this. Imagine the first time you pick an instrument, a guitar, for example, and then the same day you have to do a show. That's kind of how it is, like you interview the person and you can't just practice, you have to put it out there. So doing the interview was a lot of fun. Listening back was not as much fun for me. But still, I'm swallowing my pride, and I'm sharing this great conversation with Miguel. I mean, at the very least, Miguel has very, very inspiring things to say. He's very knowledgeable. So I hope that you can still get something out of this this discussion that we've had. Miguel was very helpful. Actually, it shows that he knows what podcasting is, and maybe even more like what doing a first interview is like. So he was very generous with me, very helping. Oh yeah, I have to do a little quick correction. Miguel mentioned that I was also in recovery, as in recovering addict or alcoholic or something like that. It's not the case, although there's no shame in that. I just wanted to be fair with people who are in recovery, that I am not. I have my own struggles with addiction, but it's not drugs or alcohol. And it's kind of a day-to-day kind of thing. Anyways, we've talked about that in the past, he and I, and maybe he mixed some infos that I gave to him, or maybe I didn't express it correctly. So there you go. Quick bio before we start. So Miguel Conner, as I said, Gnostic extraordinaire, host of Aeon Byte podcast. He is also a writer. He's written many books, including Voices of Gnosticism, as well as some novels. And more recently, as you will hear in the interview, he's written a book about Elvis, but the mystical side of Elvis, his his spiritual life, his interests in esotericism, something that I didn't know about Elvis, and that I think most people will learn about reading this book that apparently will come out next year. Other than that, Miguel has created the Virtual Alexandria Academy, where he teaches ancient and modern Gnosticism. And also, in the last 2 years, he created the Astro Gnosis conference. This year was the second edition. It was great lineup, great speakers, very interesting stuff. So check him out. All right, so all the links to reach Miguel, or to at least learn about his work, will be in the show notes. So without further ado, here we go with the interview of Miguel Conner. And we are not live, but we're recording. Miguel Conner, I'm so happy and so lucky, so fortunate to be talking with you today on this very first interview of the Hopscotch Chronicles podcast. It's the first for me too, first interview that I'm doing. I kind of feel like, what was his name? Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. I don't know if you remember that show. For people who don't know, it was a reality TV show about people with problematic dogs, and he kept taking in that old pit bull just to help calm younger dogs. So I kind of feel like you're the old pit bull today, man, to help calm me down.
I guess I'll take that as a compliment. I don't know.
Definitely. So thank you for being here, man.
My pleasure. Yeah, I remember my first podcast like it was yesterday. I don't want to be like old man yelling at the clouds, but I remember how nervous it was and everything else, and it went really well. But then I remember my fourth podcast, I had to do this like 3 times, and the guest was really nice. The recording got destroyed. It was a different era. So first one was great, but all the challenges that come, they will come. So one podcast at a time.
Absolutely. And I mean, usually it's hard to get me to stop talking. So I'm relying on my natural propensity to just blab away, hoping it'll be interesting. All right. So, well, I mean, since you're such a part of my podcasting experience, I thought, actually, I've been listening to your show for many years, and I think I plan to have many different types of guests, maybe some that wouldn't have listened to your show before. So even though I listened to your podcast for so many years, I don't really know how it started. So I hope it's not a boring question to start things with, but what's the history of, maybe a quick elevator pitch of how did Aeon Byte start, and what motivated you, or just what pushed you in that direction?
It's not that long of a story. Once I became interested in Gnosticism and started reading the Nag Hammadi Library, Lang Pagel's The Gnostic Gospels, Philip K. Dick, all that sort of Gnostic ecosystem, apocryphal Gospels, I was so excited that I wanted to share it with the world. But at the same time, I was just a newbie. For example, I couldn't write. No way I was going to write a book. Probably couldn't blog right at the time because, again, it was so new. So the logical thing was to simply ask experts questions, and that's what you do when you learn, right? Whatever you try to ask an influencer or a thought leader or industry leader questions. And I thought, well, I want to ask people questions, but I also want to share this with the world. So, boom, it was podcast. This is way before the golden age of podcasting. So I was fortunate enough that as the idea bubbled, there was this new, again, there was no Apple, there was no iTunes or anything back then. There was an individual who started a channel or a website called Free Thought Radio, which was mostly atheist stuff, but it was like an internet radio. So I pitched him the idea, and he gave me the slot. And then the gods were happy, I suppose, because I was able to get individuals like Bart Ehrman, translators of the Nag Hammadi library, leading scholars. Right off the bat, they were very friendly and very open. And that's it. Started recording one after the other, and before I knew it, I just kept going.
Amazing. I mean, I guess it's the best when you're pushed from behind and not with the wind facing forward, like you're trying to get into something. And I think actually it gets into to me, the reason I was asking this question is, well, you know me as the self-knowledge guy because I wrote a book on the subject, and you graciously interviewed me on your show about it. So I guess asking that question for me relates to how did you feel this push, But that said, I mean, it's pretty obvious that it came naturally, and that's the thing that we tend to ignore so much because there's so much chaos in this world. So we try to have strategies to navigate it, and but when usually our fuel comes naturally when we just basically shut up and just listen, So yeah, for me, it's I guess asking that question has kind of a deeper meaning in a way. And moving on from that, well, kind of staying in the same, I think for me, maybe for a lot of people, especially people who are into those ideas of reality as a simulation and things like that, and being in an illusion, I think it's sometimes very tempting to fall into nihilism and just to not find any real push to do things and to create something new, because eventually, what does it mean? Like if we're living in I'm going in deep right now, but like if it is in fact a black iron prison, why start Aeon Byte? Why start anything? Why write? It's kind of a difficult question, but
yeah, exactly. I would say, because that's the story you've chosen. If there's no meaning, then you can give the universe meaning. Now, of course, I believe there is some sort of purpose and movement to the universe. Even when you were talking about chaos, even in chaos theory, there's something called a reorganization. Complex systems order themselves to create an aesthetic, a rhythm, a view. And you find that a lot in chaos theory, even things like the Fibonacci sequence and others. There is a rhythm, a pattern, a harmony to the universe. And the question is, what is your place in the universe? If you can't see this pattern, then you need to do some self-reflection, because it is there. You can see it in your life. You'll see a pattern in your life if you look back. Why did this happen? How did I end up here? Why do I keep up ending in this relationship or this job? There's a pattern, and then there's a movement. And once you really go inward and reflect, contemplate on it, you'll see that it does lead to somewhere. It does lead to a higher message. It does lead to a purpose that you have in this world. So, and I understand the nihilism. I mean, the Gnostics toyed with it, but so the Buddhists toy with it too. I mean, nothing matters, which is kind of true. We're just magnetized karma, and only a few get out. So why bother? Well, it's kind of what Neo tells Agent Smith in the last Matrix movie when he's getting his ass kicked. And he kept saying, "Oh, Mr. Anderson, why do you keep getting up? It's hopeless. Love doesn't exist, da, 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 da." And Neo just says, "Because I choose to. Because it's fun. Because it brings purpose. Because it brings energy. Because we are humans and we must move forward. That's how we've been able to defy space and time, create art, and do things that seemingly defy time and space. So it's all part art, science, our ability to create. It's part of that hermetic thought where we can become fully divine and fully human. So that's kind of why you do it, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finding a why, WHY.
Creating a why.
Because I mean,
yeah.
did you ever? Because I'm wondering, because for me, like listening for years to people like you, people like Gordon White, Mitch Horowitz, and kind of getting to the middle of my life, and tending to kind of comparing myself to other people, people who inspire me. I wonder if you've ever had to struggle with nihilism, because it feels to me like people who, like build these great body of works and great platforms, and there's kind of, maybe, is it something that's innate, or did you ever fall into this? Because that's my life story, and I don't want to make it all about me, of course, but just doubting myself and doubting the reasons, and just being frozen by the void and frozen by nihilism and non-duality in many ways. It froze me in my steps, until I found something that just resonated that I can't really explain. But I wonder if people like you and the people I mentioned, like, well, of course you can't talk for the others, but do you ever struggle with that? Like, why, or have you ever struggled with that? This why, deep why feeling?
Only about 100 times a day. That's it. No big deal. Yeah, I think that's normal. You question, what am I doing? Is this even worth it? Is it even moving the needle forward? Maybe there's nothing on the other side. I get that all the time, of course, but that's the game of the archons, and that's how you realign yourself. Because if you've had an experience, a higher world experience, then it is true, and the whole world wants you to forget that experience, which we've all had in dreams, mystical rituals, other places, creating art, looking at a sunset. There is some just sublime beauty and energy that has flooded your body. But we are creatures, that's perhaps the curse of humans. We are where the fallen angel meets the rising ape. We are between heaven and hell, and we carry those energies. So there are times when, I feel, what's the point? Why not just fall into materiality and just eat a lot of chocolate, or go back to drugs, and just, as the Kurgan says in the movie Highlander, it's better to burn out than to fade away, and just go out with Kali in pure destruction. But again, that's when I realized that we all have a higher purpose. It's undeniable. It's like Jung said, you have no choice but to individuate. Your entire psyche is working for you to individuate and become whole. What is the reason beyond this world of Dominic or Miguel? We don't know. But in this world, there is this place where you individuated, where you're whole and you find transcendence and a sense of belonging and a sense of healing others. And as above, so below. So if it's going inside my head, then it is happening with the entire universe too. So there is a purpose. It's the problem, I think you just made the big mistake you've made, which is the killer, is that comparing ourselves to others, because your journey is completely unique and my journey is completely unique. We can learn from others and use each other as signposts, but it's a completely unique journey. When you end up comparing yourself to others, that's when the arc of the trap comes in. Because you start losing individuality, you start allowing mechanistic things. And I still get myself in that trap. Like, why am I not here, but this person's over here? Why is this person over here and I'm over there? And that's a deadly trap. You cannot do that. Your journey is your journey. And once you find that gnosis, what others do don't matter unless they need your help.
Yeah. As you'd say, very well said. I love what you just said. And, it reminds me of... yeah, for sure. And that's something I remind myself to in my language when I address people about spiritual stuff is try not to get into this, just let go. You just have to let go. And because you're already enlightened, you're just gripping to it's your ego, and like all those platitudes, those very, like, making it sound easy is, I feel, very disrespectful to people's endeavors, especially when they're very serious about it, because that's something I feel has to be addressed is in spirituality, in spiritual circles, we find a lot of people who kind of cut corners. Well, we find both. Some are maybe too serious and they get mad, and getting mad is kind of sometimes a good idea, but it gets too serious. But for a lot of people also in like more new agey circles, we see a lot of treating things not seriously enough, and ending finally not changing much, not really expanding your consciousness, if you want to call it that. Or so to be really dedicated to this search, I think, is primordial to actually make way. And also, there's something that you mentioned. You talked about Jung saying that it'll come naturally in a way, individuation. And it's funny because
no, it doesn't come naturally.
Oh, but I mean, like, there's not that it comes naturally, but there's maybe I misunderstood, but there's something that wants you. The universe wants you to. Is that more like it?
Yeah. You're going to individuate. The question is, how much pain do you want? That's just how you learn in this life. I mean, we've both been, I believe, you're in recovery too. And we both know the drill, right? If we do what the program says, if we follow what our sponsors does, whether we do the 4th step, whatever, there'll be relief. If we don't, there'll be pain and relapse. But one way or another, as long as you don't relapse, you're going to get to insight. It's how fast do you want to get there? So That's another problem, comparing ourselves to others. There's the sloth part, which is also very, I'll get to it tomorrow. Oh, I don't want to do this. It's too much work and I might have to look inward. So these are always a pitfall. And of course I fall into them. I mean, I know exactly what I need to do right now to get myself even more, to get myself in a sense of peace or closer. But I'm going to fart around and make excuses. It's what Jung said. The defeat, the victory of the self is the defeat of the ego, or the awakening of the self is always the defeat of the ego, because our ego has been programmed with certain agendas and certain ways of thinking and being, and that's sort of the struggle.
Yeah, and absolutely to see this very clearly, how our ego works and how it takes us like a moth towards some fake light, I think that's the first step to, well, I don't know if I should use the word enlightenment, but something akin to that, or at least to some type of awakening, So, wow, hey, man, I mean, we've just started and we're already super in deep. I was taking notes, like it's my first time interviewing someone, and I was just trying to figure out, like, I don't want to try to steer too much the conversation, but there's things that are genuinely interest me, and I don't want it to be too heavy, but not too light either. And
well, I like it because every time I get on a podcast, it's, can you define Gnosticism? It's kind of boilerplate what I have to say, so it's nice to jump in the deep waters off the bat. So kudos.
I love this. Yeah, well, I mean, for people who don't know you and your work, or who don't know Gnosticism that much, there is so much that you've already said about this. I don't feel like, I mean, I'm just trying to bring something new to the table, and like maybe that's why I'm trying to take you to these very well. I'm saying that, and I'm not controlling much right now. So, but it's funny because
there are many people who will write and say, it's not. They'll write on social media or send me emails or messages. This is all going to lead to nihilism. And I'm like, no, I already made the arguments. Why? Yes, there is a kind of nihilism. It's sort of the alchemical destruction of your ego, which means there is a transformation, there is a nigredo, there is a staring into the abyss kind of thing, and the abyss stares back, this sort of hero's journey into the dark underground, and everything seems lost and everything is breaking apart, but you run into the treasure. That is certainly true, as I've been saying, because yes, your ego, or you say your worldview must die. There is a death. Your worldview, your prior beliefs, your habits, your program, and it does feel like a death. It certainly is a death in certain ways, because you are being transformed, or you are slowly transforming into another light. But all you need to do is just look at the historical Gnostics. I mean, you've read the text. Oh my God, we're trapped by the archons and the demiurge, and they're raping Eve, and they control our minds, and we've got the counterfeit spirit, and every kingdom is ruled by Satan. But then there is this sense of joy, and these beautiful hymns, and this laughing at the face of the universe in a Nietzschean way. So all you have to do is look at the ancient Gnostics and realize, their texts are filled with just this amazing, beautiful, poetic joy. And historically, they were very happy, balanced people. They were loved by their communities. They were, they were individuated. They were in a sense of balance, so they could handle the world, which is better than most people can.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we'll have to talk about the Gnostics and eventually. And I understand that it's kind of strange to talk about the Gnostics. It seems to me, with my very small knowledge of this subject. But where, and it's funny because I've been told by people, that your thinking is very Gnostic and your book is very Gnostic. And like my best friend is a Taoist priest, and I'm a very DIY guy. I don't follow I don't really follow traditions, but I'm still interested by them from a human standpoint, like before any beliefs starts to form, what arises naturally in our humanity, like even before the light manifests through the ego, So I don't know if I'm being very clear here, but so to me, this DIY aspect to spirituality is something that's really important and not often addressed, because it's a tricky area, like and recently I've been wondering, just this DIY spirit, that we've seen in the punk and grunge movement, and nowadays, I mean, it's you can make a movie on an iPhone, So where did it start historically? Like what are the first examples of that? So I was thinking about it from a spiritual standpoint. I was wondering if the Gnostics were, in a way, the first DIY looking for the right word. Well, you'll get what I mean. The first to experience God and Gnosis through themselves first, because, as I understand, they valued authority of self over the church or an external God, So within spirituality, were the Gnostics the first punks of religion or spirituality?
I guess you could say that. I mean, I don't even think you could say that about punk. I mean, look at a band like The Clash. Do you like The Clash?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Well, who do you think Strummer was? Who do you think was Joe Strummer's idol? Who was the entire band's idol? And in fact, their album London Calling is based on this person's first album, Elvis Presley. So they weren't making stuff. They had a template. They had they honored this figure who was their god, you could say. And they said, okay, we've got the essence. And in fact, Joey Ramone used to say, yeah, Elvis Presley is the essence of punk rock because of his countercultural, syncretic, really almost hermetic force that he came into the scene. And these punk they just kind of, the Ramones and the Clash just sort of, they tapped into that energy and they innovated to make it work for them. And of course, there's the idea that, there's anarchism, counterculture, all that. You could say the Gnostics did the same thing. They were the inheritors of this ancient Egyptian magic and these ancient Egyptian mysteries. And they sort of took it on their own to the next level. Obviously, they were also influenced by Jewish mysticism and Hellenistic thought and all that. So that's what they did. I mean, nothing happens in the vacuum. And as Jan Kuliano once said, the mind is based on binaries. There's nothing too complicated about the mind. So you're always going to have the orthodox and the orthodox, the anarchists and the status. You have these two forces that are playing, chaos and law. And these forces are always manifesting in the world. And the Gnostics sort of came out on the side of chaos or anarchism. And not even anarchism. I think what always gets overlooked is that Gnosticism is a shamanistic religion. It's closer to the shamanistic spiritual modality than anything. And that goes again to the binary. There are those in ancient times who would be fine. Well, I'm just going to sacrifice to Zeus, sacrifice to this god, go about my day. Or a Christian, I'm just going to go to church on Sundays and do this, and then hopefully I'll go to heaven. Or a Jew, I'll go to the temple on Saturdays and then go about my day. And then there are those who have this thirst for this experiential side of the universe. They want to experience higher worlds. They want to travel mentally to places that nobody knew existed. And these were certainly the Gnostics of ancient times. Just so I would say that's also part of the Gnostic vibe. I don't know about, I mean, DIY. I don't know if you could say they were that. They certainly believed in tweaking things like the punk rockers did. Yeah, we respect this. We understand it deeply, just like the Clash understood Elvis deeply. The Gnostics understood the Egyptian mysteries deeply, but we're going to tweak it for the times we are in without, losing that essence of whether punk, Egypt, Osiris, whatever you want to call it, that elan vital, that chaos.
I love there's so much in what you just said. Yeah, I mean, it resonates. To me, when I say punk, I mean it's something kind of vague, and I think I've been trying to embrace the term grunge even more, because I have to. I mean, I'm late Gen X, so to me, it's part of my life growing up, and my values of DIY, just do things by yourself. Don't wait for someone to tell you, oh yeah, you're good now, you can do this, or like the way that punk rockers started bands, like, oh, we saw the Ramones playing this show, it was mind-blowing. You have a garage, so you're the drummer, and you look good, and you have a big personality, so you're the singer. And like, that's how they started. And at first they suck, they're not really good, but the importance of punk is truth and the rawness, like going to the essence of things. So I feel maybe it's not a bias, but I'll call it a slight bias to what I was thinking about the Gnostics, because I think about gnosis, and to me, the word itself implicates a direct relation with God and godliness, So, and of course, you're going to be inspired by others. But like, it has to be self-managed and tweaked for your own vehicle. And but I mean, of course, we're going to talk about Elvis, and I didn't know you would go there, like talking about Elvis because I didn't know that about the Clash, but it makes so much sense, like it makes a lot of sense that Elvis would be punk, and it's funny because when I started wondering about, okay, we have to talk about Elvis because, well, just for people who don't know, Miguel has written a book. It's done. It's written, right? Your book about Elvis.
It's well, working with the publisher, should be out in about a year,
Okay.
A little bit longer. Yeah, there's still some steps, but it'll be out.
Cool. So just so people know that you've written that book. And so I was wondering, like, what can I have to be honest. I mean, I've never listened to Elvis. So I started in meditation, to just bring his image in my mind, and some very strange memory came back up. When I started getting interested in reincarnation, the idea of reincarnation, which was very basic at the time, you die and you just come back in as someone else. I was about, 13, 14. And I remember thinking, maybe I was Elvis. Because I learned that he died. I don't think that, by the way. I was 14, and I didn't think that even back then. But because I knew he was born, he died in 1977. But technically, I would have reincarnated a bit over a month before he died. So that doesn't work. But that idea was so cool to me because I'm like, I should probably listen to Elvis now that I'm more mature, but not really knowing about anything about him or his music. I resonated with his personality, his vibe, So it makes sense that, there's something a bit punk about him. And the way I've heard you talk about how he approached spirituality also is something, it feels, correct me if I'm wrong, but it does feel a bit DIY, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah. Once he got the bug for the occult, it was like throw everything in the kitchen sink. As I write in the book, Elvis was a very obsessive person. There was no middle ground. Well, no matter what he did, he was in. And once he really started to understand, he got a taste of the alternative spiritualities. He was always interested in religion, even in his early 20s. He believed in reincarnation, didn't think there was a hell. He was an evangelical, raised as a Pentecostal. He had his idea, but once it kicked in, that was it. I mean, and we're talking early 60s when it really hadn't the bug hadn't bitten the rest of the American generation. He was ahead of his time. And he would, wherever he'd go, he'd have workers carrying 200 books of occultism with him. And he would sit there and just read. He would be doing Hollywood movies, and in between takes, he would sit there in the back and start reading and meditating. So he was just throwing everything. I think because what opened the doors when he realized that there wasn't a Jesus, there was a Christ consciousness. That's what really, and he realized that everybody has a Christ consciousness, and there are some throughout history that have just simply developed this Christ consciousness more. Buddha, Zoroaster, Moses, and he thought the Freemasons and all these, even Aleister Crowley, and he just thought, well, the purpose of somebody with a Christ consciousness is to awaken somebody else's Christ consciousness, isn't it? And then eventually this creates a healing of the world and a better human history. And thus, you could include all these other disciplines: yoga, astrology, sex magic, ceremonial magic, and it would all work. So he was definitely, as they say, very syncretic. But he followed orders. He tried, if he read that Yogananda said you have to meditate with a certain way, he would do it. But if there was if somebody said you have to do numerology a certain way, he certainly did it and just sort of incorporated things into his practice.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, that sounds, well, I mean, I guess the thing that I keep pointing people to, which is this being very, very honest with yourself on the spiritual path. If you really want to get somewhere and stop, suffering in a way, you kind of have to throw everything at it just for it to be successful. I mean, but some people, I guess, and probably Elvis is like that, is they're just very good at going for like responding to the natures or the gods. This is something maybe I'd like to address with you also, but like following that push, that universal push. They're maybe just very talented, or is that something you have to learn? Any thoughts?
Oh, it's probably a little bit of both. I think with Elvis, it definitely was the suffering too, because I think when he was born, he had a twin. Jesse, and his twin died at birth. He was born before him and died. And that destroyed his psyche, because he could, and that's actually, the research shows, when a twin dies at birth, the other twin is, Well, it does permanent psychological damage. It happened to Philip K. Dick too,
Yeah,
and
that's what I was going to say.
they have this survivor's guilt, and they start wondering what the big questions are in life. Why did he die and I live when we came out of the same canal around the same time? We have the same organs and body. What happened, and why do I? So this brings the bigger questions in lives, and it sort of dominoes, and you get these figures who, yes, are very mystically inclined, very metaphysically curious, but also tend to be very driven, very self-destructive, because again, part of them is already missing and they don't know what to do, and they're sort of untethered fireballs through life, which was both Philip K. Dick, Elvis. There's Liberace's another example. And these questions arise. And of course, with Elvis, because he was raised in a very religious background, God became, first and foremost, and Jesus. But again, once he got the cosmic Christ, that opened a complete new world. I can read the Gospel of Thomas, cosmic consciousness, and all that. And then later on, it was the death of his mother. I think he was only in his early 20s when his mother died, who he was very close to. So that also led him again into the deeper questions of life. Also with Elvis, he grew up in abject poverty, probably like third world, like North Korea poverty in the South. So there was a question as to how was I able to break through as a musician and become very rich? And do I even deserve it? These questions that kind of hit you when you are in these places. When he was a kid, a tornado hit his little town and I think killed like 40% of the town. So that question asks, like, why did I survive? Why does God cause evil? Why is there suffering? And this sort of snowballs into, again, trying to find the big answers and experience the divine so you can see the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it's kind of I don't know if we'd call Elvis a healer. I guess so. I mean, from what you've been talking about, but it's this being broken in a way when someone's really young. I mean, for sure, it's going to open people up to some of those things.
You bring another important part. Throughout history, there's this concept of the wounded healer. And those who have a talent for mystical experiences, healing, natural healing. Again, Elvis could heal headaches, broken bones. He could heal people of cancer, all documented in big biographies. But this individual that has this talent is usually noticed by the tribe and made into the shaman. Hey, you're going to be the new shaman. You've got the gifts of healing and walking to spirits and all that. But this individual is usually called the wounded healer because this individual has either had some sort of physical, mental trauma that has opened up the channels of communication, which trauma sometimes does. And this person is also very driven to understand why these things happen. But this person is permanently traumatized. In fact, the tribe wants to make sure he's permanently traumatized. Many shamans end up drug addicts in their tribes and just completely, dysfunctional mentally, but they have this talent. The channels are open. And that's what you could say Elvis was. The trauma, poverty, losing his twin, the tornado, loss of his mother, and he came from a generation of healers and witches. His mother had that second sight where she could see spirits and so forth. That helps too. But this combination really made Elvis and made any shaman out there. And I think all people are natural born healers, but unfortunately, trauma is one way that the channels open.
Yeah, I mean, being I don't want to call myself I'll call myself a recovering non-dualist. But seeing things like that, I mean, from that standpoint, from outside of space-time, just looking down at one's human experience and thinking about suffering and the pain of being broken like that. Speaking from a personal experience, it's hard for me to just reject the idea of pain and kind of run away from it, because it enriches one's life so much, and from what I've heard about you talking about Elvis, it's not only that, even becoming a celebrity and becoming rich, and for sure this comes with its lot of suffering also, but he didn't steer away from suffering. His life wasn't all pink flowers and butterflies, like it seemed very chaotic. And so I guess pain has contributed to his success in life. Is that does that make sense?
Well, like any artist, that's how you as a Jungian said, you have a big shadow. You are trauma. You are in pain. You understand pain and suffering, so you bring it forth. You bring that shadow out, and it comes out as songs, tunes, great movies. And the problem is when you can't integrate the shadow, which musicians don't do, because if you don't integrate the shadow, it starts to destroy your psyche, eat your psyche. So unfortunately, with individuals like Elvis, eventually, yes, the shadow will win, if you know what I mean. The complexes will win, and it happened to so many rock stars. And it certainly happened to Elvis. He died very young, 42. So,
oh, wow.
It's unfortunate. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's pretty wild to me that, all this stuff that you've gathered for the book, it's like, why wasn't it more obvious, like how come we didn't, because there's a lot of artists, well, maybe not a lot, but some of them, when we start to examine their body of work, we get hints of, oh, okay, I see why that song title or whatever, but I don't know Elvis enough to pronounce myself on that, but it doesn't seem as obvious, like how come it was so hidden in plain sight? Maybe it was just waiting for you to unravel it.
It was the right time. Maybe I was just the vessel, because again, there are many conspiracy Elvis books, poorly written books that sell a lot, but they have it's just bad research where Elvis is, a lizard person, or he's part of the Illuminati, or he was a Satan, or he was, brought down from the mothership. Although he did have many extraterrestrial experiences, but there's many sensationalistic ones. And you saw those in the tabloids in the 90s and so forth. You'd go to the supermarket and Elvis has returned and he was this and that. But my research is from their biographies. This is Priscilla Presley, his bodyguards, relatives, close friends, his spiritual guru. The Colonel Parker's. These are people that were part of his circle, and they saw all the strange, they saw him embrace spirituality and force him to sit there in circles and meditate. And they would see him, his ability to manipulate matter and weather and heal people on the spot, and how he could travel outside of his body and predict the future. They were there, but for some reason it's been marginalized because it's all in their biographies. It's right. Anybody could find it today. It's nothing. But I think also with Elvis is that his life was so chaotic and out of control. Even his stepbrother would say is like, there was always something so sensationalistic and greater to life. It's like, he could wake up and say, oh, we're going to get on my plane and travel to Hawaii. And then the next minute, you'd be Frank Sinatra would be walking in. The next minute, there'd be an assassination attempt. The next minute, he'd be shooting up TVs. Or, it was so insane when you were with Elvis Presley for years that the supernatural stuff was just sort of part of the whole grand, whatever, emperor rock style thing. And somehow it got put out into the world that he was some sort of conservative Christian, which he was far from it. He was really a magician, a shaman, an occultist extraordinaire, a natural born mysticism. And you're right. I mean, you can't study David Bowie without getting into his ideas about Gnosticism and ceremonial magic. You can't get into Iron Maiden without Thelema. You can't get into Jimmy Page without Crowley. You can't get into the Beatles without Eastern spirituality. You know, these things are so tied to them. But Elvis just got away with it, I think, because people still focus on the rock star and the concerts and again, shooting up his hotel room and all the stuff that was really just so larger than life that it didn't calm down. It's like now, and I think the world is ready to hear it because alternative spirituality is more accepted than ever.
Well, I, for one, can't wait to read that book, Miguel. I mean, as I said, it's been very interesting to me to meditate on the figure of Elvis, the egregore of Elvis, if you want to call it that, and feel some kind of affinity towards him, even though I know basically nothing about him. You know, so yeah, I eagerly await that. And eventually, I mean, I don't want to talk too quickly, but when the book is out, I'd spend a whole episode just talking about that with you.
Sure.
That said, because you've mentioned rock stars a lot and movies also, and just to take it in a kind of different direction, when people listen to you speak and the Aeon Byte show, you often refer to Gnostic movies or Gnostic TV series, you know, and although I kind of feel just intuitively what you mean by that, I found that for me it's hard to put into words. Like, what is actually a Gnostic movie or Gnostic series? And another question arose: is there Gnostic music? And if so, what would it be?
Yeah, it seems to be kind of absent. I've noticed bands who use Gnostic themes and obvious Gnostic terminology, like calling the names of the archons, Yaldabaoth and other Sophia, but this is usually in the metal scene, usually Scandinavian. There's a few bands that do it, and it does come up. Also, in alternative rap, I've seen it done before, especially the more political, anarchist type of rap music. It'll talk about simulation and the powers that control us. So you do have it there, but in popular music, I mean, obviously, man, I would have to think about it. I can't. I mean, there's always songs. Somebody has a song about Gnostic themes, and because we can all relate to we are trapped in the world. We need to escape. We need the information. We need to go inward. So you can find that from Genesis, the Carpet Crawlers, to Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for. So it comes up, but I don't think there's any band I would say that's completely embraces Gnostic themes. Like, let's say, the Beatles, and you can see the Hindu Eastern themes in their music, or the Rolling Stones in their Satanist phase. You could see Satanism coming out. Not like that, yeah. There are examples. I think Tori Amos, her album The Beekeeper, is completely based off of Gnostic Gospels. And there's a few other examples. Yeah, so she's very much into the body library.
Because I admittedly don't know that much about the details, because it seems to me that Gnosticism is very, very complex. And if you want to study it, it's kind of yeah, an ever-changing things, and I mean, because it's so rich and so varied, So
Well,
I get it.
religion, I mean, think about it. Let's say I wiped your memory. I'm the demiurge, and I wiped Dominique's memory, and I take everything about Buddhism or Taoism from your memory, and then I showed up on this podcast and gave you a 10-minute explanation of Buddhism. You wouldn't get it, right? You'd be like, okay, that sounds it. Or Christianity. What? God committed suicide? I don't, you would be like, okay, but it takes years and to not just understand it, but like you said, get it deep underneath the skin where you're like, this is, the essence of the ethos of a religion. So I don't see Gnosticism more complex than Christianity or any other religion. I mean, again, if I wiped your memory of Christianity and told you this story about a talking snake or a guy parting the waters, that's no stranger than this idea of the demiurge controlling the simulation, right? I mean, when you get familiar to a religion, the ideas don't seem as strange, even though they are strange.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna start wrapping up soon. So, yeah, it doesn't say how long we've been recording for, but it should be about. But yeah, I mean, well, as I said, like to me, if I can say it like that, Gnosticism at the moment is more based on a feel. And whenever you talk about a Gnostic movie or Gnostic series, I don't know why, but I'm like, oh yeah, I see it. Yeah. Or sometimes, I mean, sometimes I'll watch a movie and I'll be like, oh, that feels Gnostic, and then you'll mention it in an episode or something. So, and also, I mean, is Elvis's music and work in cinema or something, is it Gnostic in a way? Is that an expression? Because I mean, he, like, as a person or idea or egregore, he does feel Gnostic to me in many ways, So, like it's kind of the same thing for punk and grunge. To me, that it's especially grunge. I think it's hard to associate all the bands together because they're so different aesthetically. Well, they all like the flannel shirt thing, but I mean, I remember when I started playing guitar, like I could learn Nirvana in a week, like a whole album, but I couldn't manage to play a Pearl Jam song, So, but there's the essence of grunge. It's hard to explain what it is, but there's something that you feel that's common to all those bands. So I wonder if there's such a thing as just what is the Gnostic feel, and is it, can we see it in Elvis's work or other people's work?
Certainly. I mean, it reminds me of what when somebody came up to Louis Armstrong and asked him what is jazz, and he's like, if you have to ask, you're never gonna figure it out. So so it could be the same. Well, Elvis he's interesting because he never wrote any of his songs. He had a feel for the song, and he himself said, what most people don't understand is that blues was not only a huge influence on rock music, but gospel music was very influential, especially in the South, and especially to Black gospel music. And what he wanted was the essence of blues and gospel, which is, we are trapped in this harsh land. In fact, some of us are just getting out of slavery, but this is a place of poverty and harshness. We're lost. We are longing either for this God of the Old Testament, or we're longing for these spirits of Africa who we've renamed, the devil and this and that. And he loved that, or he was so attracted to that pain, that longing, that melancholy, that desire to go to your true home. and he found it in both gospel and the blues, and that was fused into rock music. And obviously Johnny Cash and others had that vibe. They were bringing this existentialist Christianity, that Kierkegaard kind of moodiness to it, and that's what created rock. And as you know, that's very Gnostic, right? We're cast in a harsh world. We want to get out. What's this information? What altered states can I get into? Which was what Elvis was doing and Pentecostalism was doing. And what do I need to get out and connect to others to wake up? And that became rock music. And how is this music going to affect the world? Well, of course, the powers that be were not happy. People forget when Elvis came out, he was like so famous. Like he was 10 times more famous than Taylor Swift, but he was also 10 times, 1,000 times more hated than Taylor Swift or anybody. I mean, half of the world hated Elvis because he was destroying all these old systems of music and fashion, and he was melting the races, and he was telling people, you know, expand your spirituality, all this stuff. So again, that's very Gnostic because you are challenging the powers and principalities of this world, the rulers of this age. So all in that makes Elvis very Gnostic. Now, metaphysically, yeah, he was an adept of Yogananda, and he said, you know, this world is just an illusion. It's nothing. There's a reality behind reality. He believed in this ontological evil. He had a vision of this evil giant monster that wanted to destroy him. So he thought about archons, and he was familiar with the Nag Hammadi library, the Book of Enoch. He read the Gospel of Thomas. So there were certainly parts of Elvis from a metaphysical standpoint that were certainly Gnostic.
I love what you're saying. To me, it kind of feels like, you know, like Gnosis doesn't belong to Gnosticism, you know, in a way. I don't know if he, you know, like Gnosis is this personal thing, you know.
That's what scholar David Brackett said. The most ironic thing about the Gnostics is that Gnosis is the one thing that's not exclusive to the Gnostics. It belongs to the world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
the Gnostics were good at marketing it, but it belongs to other traditions.
Yeah, I often think of that in the context of Buddhism. I'm not a Buddhist, but I've been more, I would say I'm more knowledgeable in Buddhism and maybe a bit of Zen Buddhism more than Gnosticism. But yeah, I mean, even when people describe Kundalini experiences, and I mean, generally it's related to yoga, I guess, most of the time. I've never done yoga, but I've heard people talking about their experiences. I'm like, oh, well, I've been through that, so that's why to me, like, you know, getting to the meat of the thing, you know, like to the bones, actually, the metaphysical bones of the spiritual path, you know, that's the most important thing to me. And I mean, I feel there's a lot of people around who kind of, even though they either belong or are really interested in specific traditions and cultures, they tend to go to the same things that can be. I remember an interview of Jeffrey Mishlove. He was interviewed actually on another podcast, and he said usually the mystics within their own religions, the mystics of the how did he say it? Within religions, there are mystics. It's not because you're religious that you're going to be a mystic. And usually the mystics of every religion, they get better. They get along better with each other than sometimes people within their own tradition. So
yeah, makes sense. I would agree.
Yeah, Gnosis is just for all humanity. I'm going to finish on... oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, to end, Bishop Stephen Heller said, at the doors of Gnosis, all isms must be left behind, including Gnosticism. You're in a place where
Yeah.
language is going to, and ideology just falls apart. No need to take it with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Miguel, there's one last thing that I want to tell you. I had an epiphany today. I think Pac-Man is a Gnostic, man.
Yeah. You're not yet. In fact,
He's in the maze and he just goes around eating mindlessly. And once in a while, he stumbles upon a red pill and he starts eating archons.
Yeah. Well, you know what Pac-Man stands for? Program and control. So it is a conspiracy out there. It has been noticed by others.
Oh, really? So my epiphany was just, okay.
Yeah. It was the collective unconscious. It came from the collective unconscious. But others, in fact, it appears in a episode of Black Mirror. The whole Pac-Man motif is Gnostic.
Oh, yeah. I kind of remember that. Listen, that was great, for sure. I am so grateful. I want to take this opportunity to tell you and people also about your generosity and your genuineness, and like it feels like you're really devoted to this sharing of all this knowledge. And I'm saying that because I've been bugging you through Patreon mostly, because like writing this book and the book that I wrote, I did it, I mean, of course, all by myself for the whole thing, but I had people giving me advice, and you gave me so much advice. You were so generous. And just the fact that you're here today, when it's the first episode, I mean, it's very, very appreciated.
Oh, my pleasure.
I
My
just have to thank you.
My pleasure. It was fun. I had a good time.
Great. So, as people say when they end podcasts, where can people find you, Miguel?
So you go to thegodabovegod.com, or that's it. And they'll find
It's all there.
My webpage with the podcast, books, articles, social media, all that good stuff. Thegodabovegod.com. And just put it on your show notes. You can click it.
It'll all be there. All right. Well, thank you again. And happy Gnosis.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah, sometimes it's not happy because, again, your false self is destroyed. So.
All right. Thanks again, Miguel, for the wisdom and for the great words. And we'll see each other out there in the Pleroma, Canoma, both, maybe.
Both.
So you've made it to the end of this Hopscotch Chronicles podcast episode, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed doing it. And I thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you're benefiting in a way or another from this conversation. So if you'd like to follow my work, whether on this podcast or my personal work, you can go to Twitter or X and follow me at Domi_Valet, DOMI_Valet. Same username for Instagram, if you prefer that platform. You can also go to the official website for the podcast, which is hopscotchchronicles.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast as well as my personal work, you can do so by subscribing to my Patreon. The address is patreon.com/Dominique Valet, DOMINIC Valet, VALLEE. There you'll find video and audio versions of the episodes without any commercials, as well as special episodes on every Sunday where I take my Sunday afternoon tea with you guys. All right, thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep reaching for the light.